Hello and welcome to the No One Asked You podcast. I'm reading The Wheel of Time for the first time and sharing the experience with you. This is One Good Turn, The Eye of the World, and today I'm covering Chapter 37! It's the video game chapter, guys! I kid, of course, but no, the big thought I had after this was, this would make a great video game level. We even get some NPC guards. We'll get to that. No, it's the rescue mission. We get a lot of nice Nynaeve moments. I think there's one that I'm like, okay, calm down. But by and large, I am not disliking her. Let's get into it. I would say the chapter sort of does a condensed version of the flash backward, flash forward thing that happened in the Matt and Rand chapter, I think was it 34? Such that my first read through I was a bit spatially like, wait, where are we officially in the timeline? What is memory? Where were we? The second read through, it was a bit clearer, but all in all, I think it was more well executed in the Rand and Matt chapter than it was here. I think because the scene between the flashback, the big scene in the flashback, takes place in a similar time and setting as the time and setting of the actual events of the scene. Both happen late at night. That said, we open up into the chapter. At night, Nynaeve is holding on to the reins of the horses. Lan and Moraine have gone off to do something mysterious without having told her. And naturally, Nynaeve is, I think, annoyed at being kept in the metaphorical and literal dark. The trees are described as skeletal, which sets an ominous tone. Mandarb is a bit haughty. He didn't like that Nynaeve had grabbed the reins, like right before Lan had offered her the reins. Gives Mandarb a nice little bit of personality there, probably not all that different from Lan, but it's interesting because I imagine Lan would be uniquely appreciative of Nynaeve's quick-on-the-draw-ness on the matter. Aldib wants to be pet, which is adorable. She was petting her own horse, and then Aldib came in for some as well, and Nynaeve whispers, "No need to take it out on you, I suppose, just because your mistress is a cold-faced." And then it cuts off, and I like to imagine that she finished that sentence, and I imagine it was a bit alliterative. But she looks into the darkness and wonders what the two of them are doing. And then there's no line break here, but this is when we get into the flashback. And it's kind of a recap. I don't specifically off of the top of my head recall exactly where we last left off with them. Was it that they were just getting into Whitebridge and they had to decide whether or not to continue on to Camelin or go after the one coin that they could track? I think that's where we last left them. And that's pretty much the essence of this flashback here. Nynaeve was shocked by the repetitive, normal market villages. They all seem so idyllic, gives it too nice, I think, an image, but how calm and normal it just does not mesh with her knowledge of Fades and Trollocs and Aes Sedai. So she's kind of living in these two contrasting views of the world. They followed the Camelin Road for a time, and there's this specific line here. Moraine sat forward in Aldib's saddle, peering eastward as if she could see the whole length of the great highway, all the many miles to Camelin, and see, too, what waited there. I highlight that sentence here because I think when we get to the point near the end of the chapter where Nynaeve is thinking, do what you're gonna do, Moraine, do it now, please. I wonder if Moraine was using tin to keep an eye on Nynaeve and make sure that she was successful and calming the horses. But I'll say all this again when we get there. But the point being is I wonder if this line here sets up that possibility there. Moraine says, "The wheel weaves as the wheel wills, but I cannot believe it weaves an end to hope. I must first take care of that of which I can be certain. It will be as the wheel weaves." And then she decides to go after Perrin. Not that they know that they're going after Perrin, but he's the only one left with the coin. And Lan follows. Again, I thought that's what we got in their last chapter, as best I can recall. So I don't know how necessary this recap was. I guess it has been several chapters since then. And it's not like it has taken a disproportionately large amount of time to do this recap. So I'm probably thinking too hard on it. Nynaeve follows after the other two. Some of the folks on the road proudly stated they were going to see the false dragon, while others vehemently denied it. And she notes that it was at Whitebridge that she had begun to believe Moraine. Somewhat. More, at any rate. And there was no comfort in that. So that's growth on Nynaeve's part, and there are a couple moments in this chapter that I hope imprints upon her the possibility that Moraine is honest in her desire to protect the kids. Then we get the line, "The warder and the Aes Sedai were almost out of sight through the trees before she started after them." So it's at this point where I thought, okay, now we're out of the flashback then. Because, okay, hey, we're back in the trees and the other two are ahead of her. That's not the case. Again, it was one of those things that was more clear to me on the second read. But essentially, the two of them go off after the coin, and as they do so, we get the line, "Lan looked back at her frequently and waved for her to come on, but he kept at Moraine's shoulder and the Aes Sedai had her eyes fixed ahead." I feel like that sets an interesting dynamic and term, which is that it seems as if Moraine would be willing to let Nynaeve fall behind. It's no matter to her whether Nynaeve is able to catch up or not. And it does seem like it matters to Lan that she be able to, but he's not willing to go against Moraine to insist they wait for her. There's a unique relationship, I think, between Lan and Nynaeve. I'll wait for a specific line to talk about it, though. But asterisk this to that. There was an evening where the coin failed. And it's great because I'm reading it and I'm like, haha, I know that night. I remember that event. I remember when Perrin had the coin taken from him and then given back. And considering what happens later in the chapter, it's been a while since I recorded that chapter, but it brings back to my mind, what were the White Cloaks thinking? Like, knowing that the coin was what it was, are they prepared? Were they prepared for a potential Aes Sedai attack? Because it seems like, for the moment, the attack from the Aes Sedai, for lack of a clearer term off the top of my head, works. But we'll see if it ends up actually working or not. How prepared the White Cloaks truly were. Moraine stands up, eyes wide, and states, "It is gone. He is..." Nynaeve could not finish the question. "Light, I don't even know which one it is." And before we get into the next line, I'm wondering to myself whether or not Moraine is worried that means the boy is dead or not. But then Moraine says, "He did not die, but he no longer has the token. In the morning, we will keep on as we've been going. When I get close enough, I can find him without the coin." Cool. So hopefully they'll be able to get within that proximity. There's no indication of how much within the proximity they'll need to be. I wondered if she might have said, "Let's just go to Caemlyn," but spatially, it's probably for the best that they continue on to the last known point of the coin for the moment. Lan goes to sleep, Nynaeve can't sleep, and Moraine seems unable to as well, but at a point, Moraine opens her eyes and says, "He has regained the coin, Wisdom. All will be well." And then she lays down and goes to sleep. Great. Nynaeve hears that, though, and thinks that after Whitebridge, it's not the easiest thing in the world to believe. And that's where the flashback ends. We get the line, "Abruptly, Nynaeve was jerked from memory back to the night." So there's no line break there. And it says back to the night, but we're coming off the heels of a night. So I will defend my confusion on that first read through. Someone grabbed her arm. She realized that the hand was Lan's. She was taken by surprise by it. Combative Nynaeve, she expects some sort of bit of chastisement for being grabbed so easily, so unaware. But that doesn't come. Lan just says, "You are needed," and then secures the horses. He grabs her and takes her. He's very strong. She notes she was not sure she could pull loose if he did not want to release her anyway. He had very strong hands. And I had that asterisk before. And let's, with regard to their relationship, let's do a mini asterisk here. But it's not the place that I want to get to quite yet for that discussion. They come upon a small rise, barely enough to be called a hill, and Moraine is there, and Nynaeve notes how well the two of them seem to blend into the shadow. They point out the tents and the encampment, and Lan whispers, "White cloaks, 200 of them, maybe more. There's good water down there, and the lad we're after." Moraine states that the boy is in the middle of the camp, under guard. Lan, I think it is, says, "The children should not be interested in a village boy, not unless there was something to make them suspicious. The light knows it doesn't take much to make white cloaks suspicious, but it still worries me." And I wonder, we still don't know if Moraine specifically knows, or Lan, I guess, for that matter, that the reason these three are persons of interest is because one of them could be the Dragon Reborn. I wonder if either of them consider that it could be the boy. They don't know which one it is yet, and maybe he used the one power. But maybe that's not the case, because if it was something that serious, they might have killed him outright. Therefore. Then we get the paragraph, "How are you going to free him?" Nynaeve says. It was not until he glanced at her that she realized how much assurance there had been in her that he could march into the middle of 200 men and come back with the boy. Well, he is a warder. Some of the stories must be true. She wondered if he was laughing at her, but his voice was flat and businesslike. "I can bring him out." I'll continue on with the rest of what he says in just a few moments, but this was, I think, that asterisk where I'm willing to have this conversation. One, the "she wondered if he was laughing at her" note was a bit much, like, "Oh, okay, Nynaeve, calm down." But her unabashed confidence in Lan's ability to succeed here, and the wondering if he was laughing at her, and the strong hands, and that he keeps looking back at her to, I don't think there's anything, I'll use the word romantic, that's not quite what I'm getting at on Lan's part, certainly at all, in the looking back. I think the looking back is exactly what I interpreted it as before. But between all of that, from Nynaeve's perspective, I wonder if there is perhaps a bit of a crush from Nynaeve toward Lan. Now, I know some of my earlier chapters, I was very gung-ho on the Rand Nynaeve romance, and I have been made aware that that is an extremely uncommon headcanon or observation or supposition. So I'm wary to make this supposition here between Nynaeve and Lan, especially because I wonder if there is a more likely romantic underpinning or entanglement or obligation between an Aes Sedai and a warder, her warder. So if there's going to be a Lan romance, I imagine it's more likely to be with Moraine than Nynaeve. That said, considering what we know about Nynaeve being able to use the power, maybe there's just something inherent to being an Aes Sedai that desires a pairing with a warder. And since Lan is the only warder around, maybe there's some sort of just magical pull from her to him. I think I've thought way, way too hard on this, but that was my thought process. Oh, I even forgot the other asterisk. Okay, we'll jump ahead just a bit. There's a point later in the chapter where she's kind of rushing down the hill and she makes a bit more noise than she had intended. And she thinks the idea was to be quiet and she was not in any kind of competition with the warder. Oh no? And that's another one of those, okay, that's a bit much, Nynaeve, moments. But I think if you filter it through my latest supposition, it works. It could work, maybe. Lan says he could bring the boy out, but he's not going to be in any shape to ride well, or for stealth. And then asks, are you willing to take a chance? And we get another one of Nynaeve's best lines. To help an Emmons Fielder? Of course. What kind of chance? That is Nynaeve at her best. How much she cares about the Emmons Fielders and what she's willing to do to help them is her best quality, I think, so far. Lan points to their horse lines and says that if the ropes are cut enough for when Moraine creates a diversion, the White Cloaks will be so busy chasing the horses they won't be able to chase after them. We even get the line, there are 2 guards on that side of the camp beyond the picket lines, but if you're half as good as I think you are, they'll never see you. She swallowed hard. Stalking rabbits was one thing. Guards, though, with spears and swords? So he thinks I'm good, does he? I'll do it. It all fits. It all comes together. There's even more than I just recalled at the start. Lan nods and notes that he saw 2 wolves around, and that if there are 2, there are probably more, and he's a bit puzzled because he feels it's as if they wanted him to see them. And that was exciting for me. Naturally, the 2 of them don't know about Perrin's wolfishness now, but it gives me hope to think that the wolves know that they are on Perrin's side, and it makes me wonder if they're communicating to Perrin currently. And it makes me wonder if Perrin therefore knows that they're out there. Yay! They have backup. Though I don't actually think they know it. Exactly. Lan says, anyway, they shouldn't bother you. Wolves usually stay away from people. Nynaeve says, sweetly. I wouldn't have known that. I only grew up around shepherds. He grunted and she smiled into the darkness. And then Moraine grabs her by the arm, and she grabs hard enough to hurt Nynaeve. And we get this line that I'm going to call out for a couple of different reasons. Take care. Once you cut the ropes, return as quickly as you can. I'll pause in the middle of this line to say the return word there is important, because it says to me that Moraine was expecting Nynaeve to return, and Nynaeve doesn't return before the diversion starts, which feeds into my supposition that Moraine was perhaps using magic binoculars. The line goes on, you are a part of the pattern too, and I would not risk you any more than any of the others if the whole world was not at risk in these days. I hope that impresses upon Nynaeve that Moraine at the very least seems to want to keep everyone alive. Nynaeve rubs her arm surreptitiously. She doesn't want to communicate that Moraine had grabbed hard enough to hurt. Moraine watches the camp. Lan is gone. And that's when Nynaeve rushes down the hill and accidentally makes a bit of noise. As she gets closer, though, she takes more care to be stealthy. She remembers that wolves in the 2 rivers started behaving differently recently. This winter, she makes it close to the horses, and she becomes a bit more comfortable. She crawls on her belly at one point, and she watches the NPC guards do their rounds a couple of times, and it's I say NPC, it really kind of seems like that. Like they've got their course, they've got their pathway programmed in, and each time they pass each other, all is well with the night. The light illumine us and protect us from the shadow. All is well with the night. The light illumine us and protect us from the shadow. And they make the circuit twice. They repeat the exact words, exact cadence. They don't seem to just glance around. It's always straight ahead. Same formula. Very NPC behavior. And when the time is right, she continues on to the horses. There's some pros about being downwind versus being upwind, which I appreciate. I'm glad that's like something she considers. Stealthy mindset. She gets to the first horse and she's thinking to herself, one Winnie. She's very scared that any of the horses will make any noise. And I would be too. I don't know, generally speaking, how noisy horses tend to be when people come around, least of all mysterious people. Again, I'm wondering how much is Moraine doing to keep the animals silent. I'm also wondering a bit how much Nynaeve is doing to keep the animals silent. She starts slicing at the picket rope, and she heads to the next line. She makes her way through all of them, and at one point, she cuts her thumb and she bites off the yelp. She considers going back, not having finished the work. She thinks, time to go. With 4 horses out of 5 running loose, they won't be chasing anyone. Then the prose goes on, but she did not move. She could imagine Lan's eyes when he heard what she had done. There would be no accusation in them. Her reasoning was sound, and he would not expect any more of her. She was a wisdom, not a bloody great invincible warder who could make himself all but invisible. But she is determined, jaw set. She goes to the last line, and she sees that it's Bella. Yay! Bella is still around. Very happy. I'm sure when Bella reunites with Rand, it will be a very touching moment. And this signals to Nynaeve that Egwene is here. Yay! But this does signal to Nynaeve that they'll need an extra horse, because if they have to ride double, they won't be able to go fast enough to escape any of the White Cloaks. She feels so confident of this. We get the prose. She was as certain as if she were listening to the wind. That stuck a spike of fear into her belly, fear of how she was certain. This had nothing to do with weather or crops or sickness. Why did Moraine tell me I could use the power? Why couldn't she leave me alone? So she does still have a little bit of self-acceptance to get through, but she does seem a bit more comfortable, or rather, I guess you could say a bit more in tune with identifying when she uses the power, if indeed that's what's happening here. She unties Bella and one other horse, and through this, I'm thinking to myself, well, how is she going to get those horses out without being seen? But it becomes fairly clear that she intends to stay there until whatever distraction occurs. And considering that Moraine had said, return, the fact that Moraine's distraction does come signals to me that she probably watched and saw Nynaeve stubbornly stay there. Or maybe she just senses through the power that Nynaeve is refusing to move. Or hell, maybe even the first lightning bolt was Nynaeve's. I don't actually think that one to be the case, though. We get the prose. Desperately, she wished for Moraine not to wait on her return. Whatever the Aes Sedai was going to do, let her do it now. Light, make her do it now before. And then lightning strikes. Lightning shattered the night overhead, for a moment obliterating the darkness. And it's very thunderous. It is very lightningy. And all of the horses go mad. And Bella and the other one tug at her in 2 opposite directions. I have no earthly clue how she managed to keep them close together. How did it not rip her apart? I don't know. It takes all of her inner strength to hold on to them and keep them reasonably close by, to not just run off. The lightning strikes again and again and again. Moraine is spamming that spell. I imagine that's going to be very exhausting for her. Eventually, Nynaeve is able to get on top of Bella and guide Bella in a direction, and the other horse seems perfectly fine with following along. And while this happens, some wolves, like I think right before it happens, actually, some wolves hop over Nynaeve and her 2 horses and start attacking the other horses. And I'm like, no, wolves, don't attack the horses. They need to run so that the White Cloaks will have to chase them. No, I'm sure whatever it is the wolves are doing, it's designed to help. And I think it's humorous that Nynaeve presumes that Moraine has anything to do with the wolves. And so she runs off. End chapter. Good chapter, fun chapter. I'm curious if there will in fact be a reunion here between Perrin and Moraine and what that would look like. I'm curious if Perrin will instead choose to run off with the wolves and elude Moraine in some way, shape, or form. So I vaguely recall from scenes I've seen characters in a gibbet, I think that's the word, being paraded through Caemlyn. And like I had no circumstances. I thought based off of previous chapters that would be Perrin and Egwene. And I don't remember the scene well enough to know if it, like anything else about it, it's... So now I guess I'm wondering if it might be Nynaeve. Maybe she'll be caught, but I don't know. The memory is so foggy. I end up just confusing myself, which is frankly for the best, I think. I think that's all I got for now. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. Okay, thanks, bye.